guards, so on. And sea level rise, U.S. naval bases are at risk. The largest naval base in the world, I believe, is in Hampton Roads. Very vulnerable to sea level rise. So there are military interests, particularly in the bases.
You have to remember that there are no good choices left. When it comes to climate, there are no good options remaining. We left behind the last good options a generation ago. What that means is whatever we do to deal with the climate, whether we're talking about locking up Ecuador's oil underground, whether we're talking about geoengineering, whatever the steps we're going to take, they're going to involve unpleasant and difficult decisions. So just remember that beyond anything else, that when you start to think deeply about these issues, you're going to have to recognize that there are no good choices left. Now, one thing that is interesting about the military, it's very likely that we as a global civilization will need some kind of human institution that has a multi-generational perspective and a global reach and a large number of participants in order to carry out various projects, whether we're talking adaptation or remediation or finding homes for refugees. In the past, that would have been the Catholic Church. In the historical past, that would have been major religious institutions. That's not going to be the case these days. So ask yourself, what are the remaining global scale, multi-generational perspective institutions out there? And unfortunately, the list pretty much is limited to the military.
So if there are no options left, you only no good options, there is no options. So governance for you is military. How do you deal with this vision as a politician?
I think that the military interest is one of the origin of climate engineering. I don't know if it's a very broad origin, don't know. Perhaps some interest. You have a comparable discussion, a very silent debate about non-lethal weapons, where there is the concept to construct genetic modified organisms which need special oil components of tanks or something else. There is a possibility to regulate by the bioweapon convention, but it's really not easy to regulate because it's non-lethal and you can't really say this is a military interest to change some movements. Both debates, I think, show that in the end it wouldn't be successful strategies to do it in the military aspects because you can't control really the consequences. So I think it's in the end not really of interest for the military because you can't concentrate it on the local areas you want to have to fight any people or something else.
So biopolicy in the future looks not so right. The last question before we close this round, please.
Thomas Brun from the ISS. A question probably mainly to you, Jermaine. I really like and share your view, zooming out a little bit and looking into the human system as a whole, joining with the Earth. And I personally like to think of human history as a process of learning, actually, mainly focused about learning how to bring together the concept of life on the one hand and the concept of consciousness on the other hand. And I sympathize with your image of thinking of being a gardener and learning to assess the consequences of actions. And my impression is that the process we are currently going through may be something like a learning process of globalization of this consequences overseas. And I wonder, to connect this with the concept of geoengineering, from your perspective, what could be the contribution of the discussions around geoengineering for this learning process, how to learn better, assess consequences of our actions, particularly on the global level?
One of the things that we see historically, time and again, when we look at the broad scope of history of human society, is that ignorance tends to lead to unfortunate accidents. When you don't know what the consequences are going to be, or you have a very limited perspective on what those consequences should be, when you have ideological restrictions on what is allowable to consider as the result of consequence of an action, these lead to unintended consequences at best, disaster at worst. When we look at climate engineering, we've been thinking about this conversation that we're starting here at the first international conference. When we think about this question of can we be gardeners, what we're doing is we're trying to peel back the covers, trying to reveal to each other, to the world, what the variety of possible consequences might be. Not to say that this will happen or that will happen, but to say this could happen. We need to be watching for the steps along the way. That is a possibility. We need to be aware so that we can plan accordingly. The idea of becoming a gardener, of taking responsibility for our decisions, really requires us to have as firm as possible an understanding of what those consequences can be.
Okay, thank you. I think one common message all three of you posed is take action now. And I would like to ask you for a final one sentence for our audience. What can this conference contribute, or the persons here at the conference, and perhaps not such a dark vision, something motivating our audience? One sentence.
When I entered the parliament, I tried to realize one principle: only to make decisions which are reversible. Every decision must be able to be changed by the next generation, or in 10 years. Not very easy. We're in the nuclear time, and we could change it. And GMOs and the other discussions and climate change the same. And you have to deliver the scientific backgrounds and baselines for the political decisions to make us able to make decisions which are reversible and not irreversible.
So my one sentence would be ready and willing to forgive mistakes.
I'd just offer congratulations to the conference organizers for helping to do the most important thing about geoengineering and climate engineering, which is to open up the discussion. It is amazing how constrained the discussion has been